Hi again, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm. I'm here at the place of one of my customers who asked me over for a quick session on showing her how to prune and train climbing roses to these beautiful archways that they've erected around the property. And so I'm here to do that, and what I thought is I'd bring you along, and some of my viewers have asked me for examples of how to prune and train climbing roses. So that's what this is. I'll go through 3 different roses and how I train them or establish them on the fence because they are young roses. Let's start with an overview here, and this is a fairly vigorous shrub rose or climbing rose called a Shropshire Lad. It's a David Austin rose, and what she wants to do is bring it up here from this very vigorous base onto the archway on the left here, and maybe even up and over time. There's also another option here that I'll leave open for her, that she can train it up to the right here and onto this fence. So what that means, and I'll try to insert some graphics in here, is that basically we're going to favor any growth that goes in those dimensions, either off to the right to the fence or off to the left to the archway, and anything that is sort of facing out the direction of the camera here is going to be kind of unproductive. What I also want to do is have a quick look at the inside of the rose here, and I will again try to use some kind of marking on the screen so you can see this, but there is a bit of congestion down low on this rose. Now it's a young rose, so that's totally fine, a lot of new growth at the base, but we'll clear some of that out just to clear the deck and make it easier to see what we're doing. Well, I think I've framed the shot as best I can here, and I'm kind of wedged in beside the rose. So you can see that I want to take this one out. It's kind of facing directly out towards the camera. First cut, I'm going to just cut it there, just to get it out of my way, because it's kind of constricting my personal space as I'm trying to do this. So as I said, this one is an easy choice because it all substantially comes out this way or out this way. So I'm going to take that, and ultimately I'm going to take it as low as I can manage at the base of the stem. And that, again, immediately removes some of the congestion from the center of the shrub, that I can better see what I'm doing. All right, here's another one that I think is kind of an easy decision, kind of dark black stems there, and sort of heading the wrong direction. I'm going to cut that as low as I can manage. And another one that is, again, just very low, very congested inside the shrub. That one there, I'll take that out as well. So I guess that's what I would call my clearing the deck pruning, just getting some of the stuff out of the center so I can better see what remains. I mentioned I would take off this part here. Now this is again where it has split, and it's already progressed upwards a little bit, and she's tied it on up here a little bit, so I'll have to untie that afterwards. But I think on this one here, it's a kind of a tough call because it will kind of tend to callus like this and heal over. That split is always going to remain a weak spot. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get it at about this spot here, and that should allow, hopefully, what remains there to just callus over and completely heal over. Eventually, I mean, this is one of the older stems, so eventually that might not be a productive stem anyway. But for now, it's probably got a couple of good years in it. So getting that out of the way is probably a good move. This one here, not 100% sure, but I have, 1, 2, 3, 4 other really good stems here, and it is obviously going to shoot from the base again, so I'm going to make the call on that one and get it out of our way. Maybe you can see my next target here is sort of pointing outwards from both of our supports, so I'm going to take that one out down low on the stem. And while I'm down here, just a dead nub there. So this one here becomes a tough judgment call as far as I'm concerned. You can see that there's another stem here that could go back and down along the fence. And I guess what I'd say is I prefer this one overall because it's a little bit higher up. If you try to train this one down across the fence, you end up with this bottom section here quite low and kind of blocking some space around the base of the rose. So what I'm going to do on this one is just cut it down low, and I will be training or leaving the customer to train this one along the fence again, optionally, she may decide to go over this way, or she may decide to go solely up and over the archway. But this, I think, gives her some nice options, whereas this one, I think, takes up too much space. I'm just going to trim back this one here that's facing outwards, and this one here that's also facing outwards, just to keep it closer to the panel. And probably on this one here, even though it's kind of nicely wound itself through the panel there, I kind of don't like how tight it is with these stems here. So that's a subjective thing, but here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to be a little brave here, and I'm going to pull back on this and see if I can do, without causing too much damage, of getting this thing to wind back out from the panel and put it back on this side. And you know what I kind of like in terms of training a rose is if you can tie them on, that's great, but if they kind of wind through the wire, that limits your pruning options for later. And once they stiffen in that spot, they can actually start to rub against these panels. So better on this side, I think. While I'm finishing up here, I'm just going to look at this stem here. Now we're on the inside of the archway now, and what I want to do is just bend this over this way, give it a good start for the season, and get some more stem in that sort of horizontal fashion. So I've grabbed some of the wire ties that she has around here. And you'll note that the way that I've pinned them on here, these are not tight, these are just loose loops around the stem, just bending it in the direction that I like. Going handheld now for the results shot, and sorry if it's a little shaky, but you can see at the base of the climber now, a lot less material there, a lot less crossing stems, just opened up, cleaned up, and there may be new stems, or hopefully there will be new stems that come from the base there again, but that is a lot cleaner. As we go up it, you can see that we've begun introducing some of that horizontal and sort of S-shaped material going back and forth across the width of this arbor, which is only probably about 3 feet, maybe a little more than 3 feet. And then as we go up, we have the sort of finishing touches tied on. And I've also tied this one on over here. Probably I would tie it back down as well, but at least that gives the gardener some options about where she's going to go with this. Let's have a quick look at some of the other varieties, because your pruning style and your training style probably will vary a little bit based on how thick the stems are and how pliable the stems are. This one tends to be kind of a thicker or firmer stem, whereas some of the ones that are sort of lighter stems or thinner stems, more pliable, are much, much easier to train. Okay, I've got 2 roses here, one on the left, one on the right, both going onto the same archway, and it's a big archway, so maybe it'll support both of them. But what I wanted to show you is, what I was just saying is that the difference between the style of rose makes a big difference in how you're going to train it. So you look at this guy here, this is Eden, and I'm very familiar with Eden, and Eden does send these big, thick canes like this. And of course, this is newly established, so the gardener did the right thing, is kind of let it put on some new growth, and that's fantastic. But you can see that these are going to be hard to train because they've come out this direction. They're going to be hard to train onto this archway, whereas this one here has such thin, fine little canes that it's super easy. Whatever you leave on here, you're going to have no trouble getting that to bend back onto the archway. So what I would do with this one here, and I'll show you, is out of these 2 big monster canes that are sort of both heading out in the same direction, I'm going to pick a winner and pick a loser, and this one happens to be a little bit closer to the archway, so I'm going to get rid of this one here, and I'm going to get rid of it right at the base. I can even see there's a little canker at the base of this one, so probably the right decision, and get that out of the way. And this one here is kind of a tough call because it's super tall, and it also has no sort of horizontal growth on it. And the call I would make actually is to sort of cut it down low and let some of these side shoots come out, and then she can train them back along the fence there. I see this one is heading backwards, this one's kind of heading backwards. I don't have close-ups here, but you have to trust me that they're there, and I would cut it right here. Those are brave cuts, but what it does is it sets up these stems here as they come out. It'll give her a chance early in the season while they're still a little bit bendy to kind of train them back towards the fence there. Okay, same process here to just give this a good start for the season. I'm going to decongest the base of the rose here and get rid of anything that I know is facing completely in the wrong direction and doesn't help the rose at all. Like this little stem here is a little bit older and it's kind of facing out this way. It doesn't look very productive. It's got some brown wood on there. So cutting that one down at the base, that's a no-brainer. I always start with the easy cuts. It builds my confidence, which is fantastic. Now, as for what else I'm going to leave here, I'm going to give everything a little bit of space. So again, this is a thin, weak stem in here. I'm not sure you're going to see that very well, but take my word for it. It's a tiny little thin stem coming off of a brown nub, so I'll get rid of that. Of these ones here, this one is kind of aiming off in the wrong direction. It's sort of aiming off. I mean, I guess you could train it backwards a little bit. It's pliable enough, but this one is here anyway. So once again, don't overthink it. I'm just gonna pick some winners and pick some losers, and that one is coming out of the way. Now, what else are we gonna do here? Give some things. I see that there's some dead stem up here, so I'm gonna get rid of that, get rid of that. My kind of intermediate plan is that this is going to shoot up this way. That's kind of the hope. This is kind of bending out that way, so may as well get rid of that. This guy here has a couple of healthy buds already expressing out this way, so I'm going to get rid of that there. And these two are already heading back onto the fence here. So basically, I'm just going to leave those and just decongest it. And this one down here, hard to know whether I should leave that or take it out. Probably for now, I'm just going to take it down to here and leave the options. So we've taken off enough material now that this thing actually should take its energy reserves and push it into new growth. Lots of thin, flexible canes. The gardener should be able to train up and around on this archway. On the other side of the same archway, I mentioned there's a contrast between these two roses. You can see how much thinner and more pliable these stems are compared to that Eden. And that gives you a wealth of options. It's kind of nice. It really doesn't make it less complicated because you still have to choose which ones you're taking out, but really any of them will work. Like even if you chose this one here that's kind of facing forward now, there's a good chance that because even these one-year-old stems are very thin and pliable, that you could bend that back and get it against the fence whichever way you want. So there are some thinning cuts. The only one here that I think is kind of like irretrievably out of the way is this guy here. So I'm going to take that one down low, do a little quick thinning cut on that. Any dead or damaged stems across the base. And then when it comes to what's remaining here, I just have to pick some winners and losers. This one is facing away naturally from the arbor, so I'm going to take that one out. Probably this one here because it's kind of in my way. And from all of these stems here, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You know, take a pick. This one here has a big red spot on it from disease, so I'm going to take that one down low. Just as a way to make a selection, really. And then the rest of this here, I'm just going to go ahead and make some thinning cuts on it. And that should be good. It gives us a good start. You got, you know, again, 1, 2, 3, 4 major stems, and they're all pretty pliable, and they can all be trained right back onto that archway any which way you want. So I think that gives you a good start on this one. And for a young climbing rose, that's pretty much all I would do. You don't really have to do much more than that. This one's going to put on lots of growth this year. I'll just give you a closing shot of that archway now. You can see this one is thinned out and ready to go for the season. This one has a lot of space in between the different stems, and they're ready to move for the season. Thanks for sticking with me while I did these 3 examples of pruning and training your climbing roses. I've done other videos on the topic before. The first one is more of a theory video talking about why you train your roses horizontally, for instance, and other things about climbers. I've also done another example in the past. I'll link that above here. Between that video and this one I just did, you should get a pretty good idea of how it is that I think about these pruning cuts. All right, thanks so much for joining me. And if you have any questions about anything to do with roses or growing plants, just drop those into the comments below the video and I'll see what I can do to help.